Okay, so in this video, I will be teaching you the details of muscle contraction. And before we start into the whole sequence of events of muscle contraction, quick recap. That is what we have already done in Friday's class. The main structure and organization of muscle is that a main muscle of your body, like a bicep or a tricep, will have bundles of fascicles. Each fascicle contains muscle fibers. And muscle fibers are believed to be fusion of many muscle cells. That's why they'll appear multinucleated. Now, if you look into the cytoplasm of a muscle fiber, many cylindrical rod-like contractile protein arrangements will be found. Those cylindrical rod-like structures are called myofibrils. Each myofibril is made up of two types of main contractile protein, that is actin and myosin. Actin will form the thin filament and myosin will form the thick filament. Okay. What are the main components that we are going to talk about during muscle contraction? So first is the sarcomere. This myofibril is made up of series of sarcomeres in a linear sequence. And here you can see in green highlight is a single sarcomere. One sarcomere extends from one Z line to the next Z line. In between the two Z lines, you will find actin filaments, which are alternated by myosin filaments. The thick lines are the myosin filaments and the thin lines are the actin filaments. You can also see that the I band comprises of actin filaments mainly, and the A band comprises of myosin and actin filaments overlapping them. The H zone is the middle region of the myosin, which only contains the myosin tails. Also remember that from the myosin filaments, the heads are always projecting outwards so that they can make a cross-link with the actin filament. So during muscle contraction, this actin head, the myosin head and the actin fiber, they form a contact which is called a cross-link. That's why the heads of the myosin are always protruded from the thick filament. Next component that we discussed needed for muscle contraction is the sarcolemma. This is the plasma membrane of the muscle fiber. This receives the action potential from the adjacent motor neuron. Sarcoplasmic reticulum is the endoplasmic reticulum of the muscle fiber. And if you can recall, the sarcoplasmic reticulum is richly loaded with calcium ions, stores calcium ions. Transverse tubules are nothing but just dents or deep invaginations of the sarcolemma. This kind of modification of deep invagination helps the muscle fiber to transmit the depolarization wave or the action potential quickly all across the sarcolemma. Another important component of muscle contraction is the motor neuron. If the motor neuron is not there, then action potential won't reach the muscle and the muscle won't contract. So motor neuron basically passes the electrical impulse from the central nervous system, brain or spinal cord to the muscle fiber. Mitochondria is the main organelle which is sandwiched between many myofibrils, and its job is to synthesize ATP. Those ATP will help in formation of the actin-myosin bridge and then sliding of actin over myosin during muscle contraction. Tropomyosin is another protein which you were not introduced previously. So tropomyosin and troponin form a complex called tropomyosin complex. Basically, their job is to block myosin binding sites on actin. Now, what are these myosin binding sites? Imagine that this whole black thread of globular monomers, this is actin filament, and you can see there are cup-shaped dents on each unit of the actin filament. Those cup-shaped sockets are actually myosin binding site. This is where the myosin head fits and then grabs and pulls the actin so that actin gets to move forward and the sarcomere shortens. So when the muscle is resting, these myosin binding sites on actin, these are covered, these are blocked. And blocked by what? Blocked by the tropomyosin complex. So tropomyosin is a thread-like protein complex, and intermittently on tropomyosin, troponin units are oriented and organized in such a manner that all the myosin binding sites of actin are covered. So this is the condition of the actin filament at rest when the myofibril is not contracting. Okay. Now that we have a quick recap of what the components are who are participating in this whole process of muscle contraction, let's look at the first event that leads to muscle contraction. The first event is at the neuromuscular junction, the sensory neuron will pass the action potential to the muscle fiber. Okay, so first event you can see action potential is reaching the axon ending, and because calcium ion channels are opening, more calcium ions from the tissue fluid is entering the axon ending, stimulating the neurotransmitter containing vesicles to do exocytosis. Neurotransmitters here, this is the second stage of the event. Acetylcholine is being released in the neuromuscular junction, that is the synaptic cleft. Acetylcholine binds to the receptors on this muscle fiber. So right now you're looking at a sarcolemma, which is highly grooved, and you can see T tubules. As soon as the action potential is, as soon as this sarcolemma is depolarized, action potential is generated, and the depolarization waves are also traveling into the T tubules. Now you look at stage 3, depolarization wave is spreading along the sarcolemma and the T tubules. Stage 4 is along the margin of the T tubules are the sarcoplasmic reticulum of this muscle fiber, and sarcoplasmic reticulum are loaded with calcium ions. As soon as they receive the depolarization wave, the membrane of the sarcoplasmic reticulum also gets depolarized, and that is a trigger that triggers the sarcoplasmic reticulum to release calcium ions into the cytoplasm here. What is there in the cytoplasm? In the cytoplasm are the actin myosin filaments arranged in a myofibril. So the myofibril's sarcomere immediately comes in contact with the calcium ion. And in the next stage, I'm going to tell you how calcium ion helps the sarcomere to shorten, because the fourth function is calcium ion release from sarcoplasmic reticulum, and the next event that happens is because calcium ion is released in cytoplasm, something happens here and the sarcomere shortens, and that the shortening of one sarcomere triggers shortening of all the other sarcomeres in the cytoplasm. As a result, the whole muscle fiber will shorten, and as a result, the whole muscle contracts. So in the next stage, let's look at what exactly is calcium doing, because of which the sarcomere is shortening. So in this image over here, you can see this is an electron micrograph of how a sarcomere appears when it is at rest or fully relaxed, and how it appears when it is contracted. What you notice over here is the myosin filaments don't change their position at all. Okay, these are the myosin filament and these are the actin filaments. You can clearly see that the gap between the two actin filament columns are now shorter here. That gap has reduced. Here the gap, the H zone was pretty wide. This is the H zone, and after the muscle or the sarcomere contracted, the H zone is almost disappearing. So that means the myosin thick filaments remain in the same position. It is the actin which is sliding and coming towards the middle of the sarcomere. So how is the myosin being able to pull the actin towards the center? To understand this, we need to know what calcium exactly is doing. Now, we already studied that actin possesses myosin binding sites, and troponin and tropomyosin block those sites. Basically, once calcium is released from the sarcoplasmic reticulum that we saw over here, once the calcium ions are released, they will immediately go and bind to the troponin. The troponin, which was blocking the myosin binding sites, will now change its 3D conformation, and tropomyosin troponin complex will be pushed aside. They will be pushed aside in such a manner that you can now see over here that the myosin binding sites, they are now exposed. How did they get exposed? Initially, they were covered by the troponin and tropomyosin complex, but binding of the calcium comes and binds to the troponins. These are the troponins, and this thread-like structure is the tropomyosin. Okay, they just get pushed aside. The green color spherical structures are the calcium. Calcium binds to the troponin tropomyosin complex and changes the 3D conformation so that the myosin binding sites are now exposed. So now the myosin head can attach to the actin. The next stage is how the pulling action or how this actin filament slides over the myosin. Let's take a look. So here you can see that the next stage is contraction of the sarcomere by sliding of the filament. This sliding filament theory was proposed by Huxley, Neidergurk, and Andrew. So according to Huxley, Neidergurk, and Andrew, the sliding filament events occur somewhat like this. Let's take a look. First, calcium binds to the troponin tropomyosin complex. This causes exposure of the myosin binding sites on the actin. So now you can see that the myosin heads are approaching and trying to bind with the actin. Two heads are visible here. One head is already attached, other one is going to attach because the myosin binding site has just been exposed. In the next stage, you will see that the heads of the myosin and the actin are forming a structure called the cross bridge. This is very important keyword. The cross bridge is this. Head of the myosin binds with the myosin binding site on actin. Once this cross bridge is formed, the head of the myosin will swivel. Okay, so look at the position of myosin heads in bit A, bit B, and look at the position of myosin head in part C. They are swiveling forward. When the heads swivel forward, the actin filament moves forward. Now, this forward swiveling motion is called a power stroke. Okay, for this power stroke to happen by the myosin head, ATP is needed. So something that I will add over here is, for this swiveling action to happen, first an ATP molecule will bind. Okay, let's say one ATP binds to the myosin head. And in the next stage, this ATP gets hydrolyzed. So myosin head has an ATPase-like action. What it does is it hydrolyzes the ATP to ADP and inorganic phosphate. This ADP and inorganic phosphate breakdown helps the myosin to do this swiveling action, just like the oar of a boat. This is the oar of a boat. And when the boatman wants to push the boat forward, the boatman will push the oar backward. So myosin head will first bind, attach to an active actin site backward and swivel forward. When it swivels forward, the actin filament gets pushed forward. For this swiveling action, which is called power stroke, ATP needs to be hydrolyzed. Now, hydrolysis of ATP is helping in two functions. One is this power stroke forward, and the main function is not just the power stroke. The main function is detachment. So the ATP hydrolysis provides energy for the power stroke, and along with that, it also helps in breaking the cross bridge. Okay, this comes in exam. So you need to know that ATP hydrolysis is basically helping in two things: producing the power stroke and breaking the cross bridge in the next event. Normally in your textbook, it just says that ATP is required to break the cross bridge, but actually this power stroke, this swiveling movement, this swivel means the swing of this head so that the actin filament will move forward. For this also, ATP hydrolysis is providing energy. So two things are happening: power stroke, grabbing and pulling the actin filament forward, and second is detaching. So now they detached. Now the head detaches from the actin side, and now it will search for the next actin side. So previously it was attached here. Now it will attach to an actin side which is behind the previous side, and again grab and pull it forward. Now, how long will this keep on happening? This grabbing and pulling of the actin will keep on happening as long as calcium is available. Actin will keep on sliding over myosin as long as calcium is bound to the troponin tropomyosin complex and the actin myosin binding sites are exposed. So how long will they remain exposed? The actin myosin binding sites will remain exposed as long as the muscle is receiving action potential or depolarization waves from the T tubules. Why? Because if T tubules send depolarization waves, sarcoplasmic reticulum will keep on releasing calcium ions. Okay, so then you must be thinking, then how long will this keep on happening? Basically, this will keep on happening as long as, if this is the sarcomere, and let's say these are the myosin thick filaments in the middle and actin thin filaments are here, the muscle contraction will keep on happening and the sliding will keep on happening until the whole of, so this whole actin filament reaches the middle. Once they reach and form this M line in the middle, contraction stops. This is the maximum shortening that the sarcomere can do. As long as they can reach to the middle M line, they will keep on shortening. Now, next what happens is, suppose neurotransmitters stop getting released at the synaptic cleft. So if no action potential is reached at the neuromuscular junction, then no depolarization happen. Immediately, sarcoplasmic reticulum will start reabsorbing. It will start taking back all the calcium ions into its lumen. And the calcium ions are gone means what will happen is, this particular stage that we studied over here. Here, the calcium ion will no longer bind to this actin, to this troponin tropomyosin complex, and again this state will be attained. That is, all the myosin binding sites will get covered. If myosin binding sites on actin get covered, actin myosin cross bridge won't form. If there is no cross bridge, then you will not find any more sliding. So contraction will stop completely. So basically, if no impulse reaches the neuromuscular junction, sarcomere shortening stops. As long as depolarization is reaching the transverse tubules, as long as calcium is bound to the tropomyosin